All right. Hello. It's time to have a little more fun with making storyboards and comics in Blender 2.82 for our upcoming lecture in envisioning sustainability. And once again, you're going to be using 2D animation to do this, which you can either get from that window there that I just showed, or you can do File, New 2D Animation, which is new in Blender 2.8 and later. This is Blender 2.82. So when you've got this going on here, what I'm going to do is to import, this time, a comic book background. So to do that, what I shall do is I shall first go to object mode, and I'm going to add an object which is going to be an empty image. And that empty image comes in flat, so I'm going to turn on my screencast keys for you so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, I'm going to take this new object that I created and rotate it in the y-axis by 90 degrees. Oh, shouldn't have been the y-axis, should have been the x-axis. So let me undo that and rotate it on the x-axis by 90 degrees. There we go. And then I'm going to scale it, and that is going to then have an image on it. And the image that I'm going to put in is going to be an image of a Spider-Man comic that I like. And that becomes my reference image. And I'm going to do a couple of things here with this. The first thing is I'm going to go to the side view, and I'm going to move that image back in the y-axis by hitting GY and move it back. And that then allows me to place other images in front of it that I want to use. So I'm hit 0 and go back to the image there. And then I'm going to add a grease pencil. But first let me name this. This is going to be called empty image, because that's what it is, so I don't forget it. Spider-Man comic page. All right. And I'm going to make a new collection, actually. And that new collection is going to be background images. And I'm going to put that one in that collection. This collection here I'm going to call Sketch Collection, and it has that stroke thing on it. And when I'm in that, that's the one that I can use to draw. So, you know, you can draw stuff on it. And that's going to be my draw image. And a lot of people like to not draw in gray or blue or black. They want to use blue. So let's look here at what is already there. There's black, there's red, there's gray, there's black dots. This can be moved up. I'm going to create a new material in here, if it'll let me. Hit plus, hit new, and call this material Blueprint Sketch. And that one I'm going to then, I've got to change the color of it to a blue pen. It's not such a great blue. Let's try that blue there. Right? And then when I draw on in, there you go. And you can see where it's drawing now. This plane that was set up for the grease pencil was on the where the X and the Y axis meet. And so by moving the background image back, I can not interfere with that image. And so, yeah, hit 0 now and get back into that. Now, I'm not sure that I want the pen to be this thick. It's solid, it's thick. How do you change that? Well, that's up here at the top where it says radius. So if I undo that and I go to a radius of, let's say, 6 pixels, then I have a line that is a bit better. And this is using my mouse. Let me switch over to my tablet, Bamboo Wacom tablet. But you see, I made a mistake with the mouse. I made a bump there. You can either go back and edit it, or you can then go into Sculpt Node and then sculpt it back into the head. So there are ways of fixing this with the Sculpt mode if you're drawing inaccurately. Of course, that needs to be fixed, that thing there, and then you'd go into Edit mode, and you would select not the whole thing, but go to the points here and just select the points that you want to get rid of. That one, Shift to get on, Shift to get that one, hit X to delete those points. Then you can select this point here, grab G as you've done before in the past, and bring it to there. And then you can go into your sculpt mode, or you could do edit. I mean, you could click off of it and use the bounding box and say, well, these points here are in the wrong place, and just move them with G, just like you do in Blender normally. Or you can go into sculpt mode and sculpt things a bit better. So there's a lot of variability here for working with a mouse. But I'm going to instead use my Bamboo tablet and keep it on. So that's my Bamboo tablet. I don't know if you can see it. There it is there, and it's got a stylus pen that I can use to draw much better than drawing with a mouse, which is a little hard to use. So as you can see now, I can sketch on here, and when I do that, and I must go, of course, out of sculpt mode and have to go down to draw mode, then I can come in here. I can find where the cursor, oops, there it was. If I wanted to, and I could start tracing lines. All right, so yes, so you can use then the tablet and come in here, and makes it a lot easier to rotoscope, as it were. But that's not the real reason for doing this comic exercise. I'll just finish doing the eyes here, and I might as well do the body really quickly, just so that we have a character. But you can see, even with the tablet, I'm not doing too well when I'm trying to rush. Never was much of an artist, but use a combination of the mouse. I'm using the mouse wheel now, and your tablet, because the tablet doesn't always make it easy to do stuff. But yeah, you can you can go as detailed as you want and grab a character and really get a fun appreciation for the artistry of Marvel's great artist. And as I mentioned, when you make a mistake like this, you can go back with Sculpt and you can fix the lines. So I'm doing it very quickly here, and just going over, just tracing like you did in kindergarten. Right. But as long as the lines are joined, it creates its own mesh. So there's Spiderman. So I missed a piece down here. Let me bring that like that. Now, using my mouse, I can go to Sculpt and fix those lines that I really did a bad job on. And I think that's the really cool thing about using the grease pencil in Blender 2.8 is just how versatile it is in letting you manipulate data so that you can get some pretty good results rather quickly. That's really spectacular. End that up in there and just get those lines to fit, you see. And I haven't even changed any of the settings for accuracy. I'm so new to this. I'm just playing with the defaults, which I think shows just how easy it is in this new version of Blender to do cool effects. But with my with my rotoscoping or my tracing, I'll just show you one quick technique that's pretty cool. So let me just fix this up just a little bit. I love the way that you can just zoom all the way in, and that way you can get a much higher level of accuracy when you're tracing, right? So you're just grabbing, you're grabbing vertices and you're sculpting them around. And I was really sloppy on this one, and I just sort of nudge it into place. And you see how the circle is big if you, oops, I don't want to do that. If you go to radius up here, you can make it really tiny, and that doesn't do much of anything. But you can also come in with a smaller radius, and then you can get finer detail in your sculpting. But for big moves, you'll want the radius to be bigger, and it affects more, as you can see. Not bad. This here should come down, that there should come down. The thumb I made a disaster out of. There we go. And the strength is what affects how strong the pull is. If I bring the strength way up, then it goes it's much stronger in its ability to drag points. So you can play with the strength as well. But be that as it may, you now have this. Let me go out of this and back into Draw, and let me spin around. See, so Spider-Man here is a drawing now, and on that layer, if I decide to take my background Spider-Man and turn it off, well, I've got a pretty good, trace of Spider-Man. And you can even animate that if you wanted to. What you might do, and let me, I can take this and go to its properties, not that one, not this one, but where is that? Up here. And is this the one that will let me put the background image? No. It may be in the world. No. Strength and radius. Color, strength. I'm forgetting where this is, where I can take it and make it transparent. And this is the Spider-Man comic page, so that is what I'm working in. I want to be able to, with that background image, maybe I need to be on background image. Oh, the opacity. No, that didn't do it. Didn't do a thing. Lines and fills. No, it's not that. It's... Oh, well, actually, I never selected it. I'm still in, I need to go to object mode. Sorry. Go to object mode and then select this, and then it should be now, yes, now that I'm in object mode, and this is orange, and I know I've selected the object, this object here. Now you go to use alpha and you can make it either disappear completely or make it somewhat opaque. So for now, let me give it a little bit of opacity, but I'm going to turn it off because I want to show how I can now use the animation function where if I go and advance a frame by hitting the right arrow and then, oh wait, no, don't do that. Sorry about that. Let me go back. Go back, okay. Let me first select this object and let me go back into draw, all right? Now let me select, can I select everything? No, I can't. Let me go into edit and let me select everything and let me not even do that. Let me stay in draw. Let me stay in draw. I'm going to click on the keyframe that I just made and hit Shift D and drag it out to my next keyframe and move it to what that next keyframe is, frame number 2. And now, because I'm in draw, I can take, let me go back to my pen, I can take his arm, and this is where it gets interesting. I can go into sculpt and move his arm. I think it's really funky, but you'll get the idea of what I'm trying to do. Let me bring the strength down and let me bring the brush size down. That's too small, but something like this. And take this arm, although that's a really bad way to do that arm. What I guess I'm trying to show you is that you have an animation starting to go right there. But of course, that's not so good. If I want to move the other arm and move it better, I would not use sculpt mode. I would use edit mode. And I'd take that arm and I would, those points that I'd have to select, but I have to select just those points. So I'm using the circle selector and selecting the points in the arm that I want to use. Now the circle is way too big. I hit the shift key to turn off points that I don't want selected. There we go. And these here, the shift key gets rid of those. All right. And take this now and rotate, I have to hit escape to get out of the circle. Okay, rotate this like he's moving his arm and grab it, and that's an odd rotation. So you'll have to play around, but now when you go to tab back and go into draw mode, now you can see that his arms are moving. So you get an animation which you could play by changing the endpoint to wherever you want it to be. And hit play. So now Spider-Man's arms are moving. And in that second frame also, we could come in here, staying in draw mode, and we could erase, with control, erase the eyes and draw a squint line, like he's squinting, right? And draw a squint line. And again, when you hit play, then he's squinting. So there's so much you can do with this. In a traditional animation, you'd maybe go to the third frame here, and you would, say, have his leg kick out. So you could also draw it like that. And in that third frame, but then you'd have to erase, as you can see, you'd have to erase the other part in that third frame rather than moving parts about. But Blender gives you all that flexibility. And you see the onion skinning. You can see what's left from the previous sketch. But a lot of it got moved. And the point is that you have every possible technique now available to you for this animation. So now he's kicking. Although it appears in my kick frame, I needed to also erase all of this. And also do it on this frame here too. So you can get quite into this. Oops. There we go. Yeah. So that's good fun, right? That's good fun. As you can see, it's moving regardless. So you can sort of bring your bring your comics to life. Good fun there. But one of the things I like to do is also use Blender to create my templates for comics. So let me just stop this animation. Let me go back to frame number 0 and 1 rather, and here go in and I'm going to create another grease pencil. So I will go into object mode. I'm going to take this object of Spider-Man and I'm going to move it in Y and send it back just a little bit, because I'm going to create a new layer in object mode, which is going to be another grease pencil. It's going to be a blank. And this keyframe is what I want to use. I'm going to draw with it. And this grease pencil, I'm going to call the comic layout. And put this in background images as well. Or maybe, no, I should make a new, yes, I'm going to make a new collection. I'm going to call that comic layout. And then move my grease pencil into comic layout. And when I draw here, I'm just going to start a collection of comic panels using the square key, like this. Does this have a enter? What color did that turn out to be? It didn't have any color at all, so black is good for that color. And where did it go? See, it's in front, because when you make a new grease pencil, it goes on that axis. So I now have this layer, and I can make another one down here, and another one down here, enter, and another down here, enter, and then the whole page like that. And what that gives me then is a way to frame up. Let me turn off the background there. A way to frame up and make my own comics. Because if I call this comic layout 1 and I have a list of them, I can take many different comic panels from many different comic books and get the kind of layout that I want to work with for various effects. But I would be working then within that frame. And of course, it would then allow me, if I go to here, to take my character of Spider-Man, who is in a different layer, Spider-Man is here, and he's a really funky object. Look at all that. Let me erase those other keyframes because they're now getting in my way. There we go. So I've got this Spider-Man. If I want to use Spider-Man, he's now not animated, but I can Shift D, I can select him, and then I can shrink him down, and I could use him in other panels of the comic. Like in this one here, if I Shift D and move him over here again, you'll see that in the real comic, he's rotated. So technically, I could rotate Spider-Man about the Z-axis and begin to get his head toward the right position, and then I'd have to move his head and stuff. And with this guy here, Shift D, he's really tiny, and he's a bit rotated, but he's backwards. Well, those are just then placeholders, because then when I turn off the comic page, you see what I've got there is I've got the 3 different Spider-Man sort of placeholders. Now, undoing all of this, trying to turn heads and stuff, you're better off sketching. But it is really cool to see that you can do that. What if there was an actual 3-dimensional Spider-Man that you could actually rotate and turn around and move into position? Well, that's the cool thing about another program that's open source that works with Blender very well, which is called Make Human. So with Make Human, you go and download the stable version for Windows. It comes in as a zip file, and then unzip it, and it has this whole folder in it. There's the zip file. There's where I unzipped it. You can unzip it and launch it. Make Human lets you make human beings or make models that you can bring in. And you proceed. So in this case, maybe I would have the gender, I'd pick a male, and the age, I'd pick youthful Spider-Man, give him a lot of muscle, change his weight, make him a little thinner, make his height maybe a little taller, his proportions a little broader. He could be African or European. Let's give him a little bit of mix, because most of us are mixed. And there we go. And you can then, so that's the main, gender, breast size, face, head fat, angle. So much you can do with this. Torso, arms and legs, random measure. And you can pose him for animation. And so if you put in the default bones, then he can be positioned. And then expressions, anger, threatening, those can be added. See, he was just threatening you. What did happen to him? There we go. Anger. So you have these expressions. Doubt. I guess that's not in this one. Boredom. Boredom. Sleepy. Boring. Stunned. So let's just use interest. Attention. Okay, good. And you can also put clothes on the character. I'm not remembering exactly how to put them on, but you can. And rendering, resolution, modeling, files. But if you export this guy, and it'll be in Documents, Make Human Models, and then export him as a collada or a wavefront. Let's do a wavefront, feet on the ground, and let's call him Spider-Man. Later on, I'll show you how you can import clothes. That you have to download another add-on for that. Let's say Spider-Man for now with this, and export, and it's been exported there. All right, then I should be able to go into File, Import. I did it as an OBJ, And where did I do it to? I did it to make human, I believe. So maybe I have to see once again where it's exporting to. Save, export. It's going to documents. Okay. Documents. Make human. It's in documents. And then there should be a make human. There it is. Version 1. Exports. And there's a Spiderman OBJ. All right. So Spiderman comes in. And he comes in tall. But he is there. And so then I would shrink him down. And with this object, I should be able to do posing, but how do you see this object now? Does he not have any? Where did he come in? He came in here. He doesn't show up well with all of this, but he is in. And there's a way to go in and edit his mesh. There's also a way to go in and sculpt him. If only he would show up better. And there should be a pose version of him, which I haven't yet figured out, because if I was not in animation, if I was in layout, then I know that I'd be able to do something with him. If I was doing, see, there he is. There he is there, and there is a way to get in and model his mesh. So if we look at him in a wireframe, we don't see the bones. It looks like it didn't export the bones. All right, well, anyway, my point was just, and I'll work on this in a later tutorial once I figure it out. That's why this is called Blunder through Blender. But there is a way to take him and, of course, oops, just this object here, duplicate him and shrink him down. Let's look through the camera here. And then we would manipulate him and then shift him over. In this one, he was turned that way, remember, and probably rotated a bit that way. And then in this one, he, whoops, not that, we want this. He was rotated completely around the z-axis by 180 degrees. I may have to just go rotate 90. There we go. So his back is there and then shrunk way tiny. Once I get into posing him, then I can set those poses and then I can begin to make a comic, but I don't have to worry about actually drawing. I can position this object and then either trace around it, just as our artists do. They'll take little figures that they can move around, like claymation figures, and then they'll set them up a certain way, and then they'll draw what they see so they can get the different positions accurately. And you can do that within Blender to make a 2D comic. So we'll come back to you on that. All right, so what we really want, though, is we want an action figure that we can move around, that we can do something with. And here, these action figures don't allow that because they don't have bones in them. So I'm going to delete this action figure and find this action figure and delete it. Where's my action figures? They are up here, that guy, and that guy, and that guy. And instead, I'm going to make a new figure in Make Human that I can export and do things with. So maybe with this, let me just get the proportions more muscular. And that's fine. Face, torso, arms and legs, materials, clothes. There should be a should be some clothing in here somewhere. Modeling, custom, targets, materials, geometries, casual. There we go. And let's give him a male casual outfit. There we go. All right. Does he need shoes? I can put shoes on him. Except there's no shoes in the default. Okay. So we're not going to find shoes in there. Fine. He'll just be what he is. There. Or there. I think I like this one. No. There. That's a better look for me. Now, when you're going to edit this guy, he needs to have Game Engine under Rig Preset. So go to Pose Animate and then go to Game Engine and put those bones in. They work the best for what we're trying to do. And then when we go to the files and we go to export, we are going to export him as a Filmbox FBX, and that should keep his bones in there. Should be. So Filmbox FBX, he's got the bones, and that should just do it. So you want to export this to the folder. I can do in Make Human, and I'll make this guy Spiderman for Blunder. Oh, we didn't give him any hair, and I suppose we could have given him hair. There might be some hair in here. Yeah, the material. Most of these guys are bald, but not all of them. I don't see anything for there's hair. Okay, so male. Let's give him some short hair like this. All right. Now let's export him. I know Spider-Man doesn't have any hair. I mean, he's got a mask. But it might be interesting now to redo this. Export. And export it. So when we bring this FBX in, when we do import FBX, and we find in Documents, and then in Make Human, in Exports, Spiderman for Blender, he comes in, and he has these bones, you see. And that bone there is a bit large, a bit extreme. You go into edit mode, he'll end up flat for some reason, and then take this bone here and scale it down and move it over just so it's not too much in the way, and then go back to object mode. Alright, and what you have here with this figure selected, and let me make sure I save this, is a character that you can work with in many different ways. So if I hit Shift D and I bring him down into this panel and hit Shift D and bring him into this panel and hit Shift D and bring him into this panel, now I have a character to work with and you can select him. Oh, it should have come in as one character. It's called Game Engine, is it? Yeah. All right. So select it here is better. And then you should be able to go to pose mode, and you should then be able to grab certain bones in here. Helps if you turn on X-ray up here. And you're going to have to set these bones up. So usually what people do is they take this particular ankle bone and go to this pose bone thing here, add bone constraint, and tell it that you want inverse kinematics and make the chain length 3. And you see when you do that, that a line is drawn up 3, 1, 2, 3 chain lengths. You can see a slight outline, that orange line there, which is traveling up and through. And that means that they're now connected, so that if I hit G, you can see by pulling on that ankle bone, I can move the character. So that's inverse kinematics. So you're going to do that for each of the, I don't know if they're called tarsal bones or what they're called, but you're going to put this inverse kinematics with a chain length of 3. And do the same thing for the wrist bone here. Give that a chain length of 3. And the same of this. So you're thinking it's like a puppet. And what would you pull on the puppet if you were doing a puppet on a string? What strings would you pull to make the other parts of the puppet move? And here, that would be the one that you would use to do your positioning. You see, it can be quite fun. Now, the other thing that you do is you pull on the fingers, and they would get a chain length of 3 as well, because there's 1, 2, 3 bones there that you want to be able to move. So inverse kinematics on this with a chain length of 3, and you can see how that orange line goes up to the wrist there, and then when you bend it, you can move the fingers around. So you do that with each of the fingers as well. If you're following along, you can be doing this with me. So this is the setup. You've got to do this setup each time that you bring a character in, which of course means I'm going to erase the other characters that I copied, because I want to copy characters that already have the inverse kinematics set. So there's that one over there. And same here. And I'm going to pause because you don't have to see me go. And once you've done all the fingers, you can then go up to the head and click on that, and that would take a chain of 2, because there's only 2 bones in this game engine rendering guy. So that would be inverse kinematics, and then a chain length of 2. And so that lets you, if you needed to, you could rotate the head and make him nod, as you can see there. Alrighty. It's a little easier to see him in solid. But if you rotate the head, it makes those bones move. So let's say you were rotating in the y-axis, or you were rotating in the x-axis. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. Let me turn on screencast keys and see if that can help, if you need it. There, okay. So we've got our inverse kinematics. There's also the ability to bend it at the torso. And where would you bend it? Some people say in movement that the hips control everything. Maybe it's this bone that we would want to use if we wanted to bend them at the hips. And so you can take that as well and add your inverse kinematics and then make your chain length 2. And then if you rotated him in X, he would take a bow. Hajimemashite dozo yoroshiku. Okay, so you have then the ability to move this guy around by these things. You don't have to pick on the bone that has the inverse kinematics. Of course, if you picked on this and you rotated it, then you'd get that. If you picked on this and you rotated it, well, you'd get pretty funky there. The inverse kinematics definitely help, though, because if I rotate that from here, well, the rotation doesn't do anything, but the grabbing would. So there's more advanced ways to do this with different kinds of kinematics, but these are the basic ones. And having these basic ones done, and I'm going to name this guy, which is going to be Spiderman Large. And then I'm going to copy him, get back into object mode to do it. Pose mode, edit mode. Well, I want object mode. All right. So this guy's selected. I need to, of course, get rid of these other guys that I created now that I realized that they don't have the kinematics. Oh, what just happened here? Wow. Ooh, well, that's not good. Eating up his eyeballs. Well, that was really weird. Let's see if the same thing happens here with Game Engine 2. Game Engine 2. Can you select? Oh, we don't want to select all those. Game Engine 2. And delete. Hey, this is the same thing. Goodness gracious, isn't that funny? High poly meshes and the whole bit. So yeah, kind of weird what's happening with these. I suppose that I could isolate him with doing, if I do Game Engine 3 and I hit Shift H, then everything disappears but him. Then I can select it and delete it, and it should be gone now. And then hit Alt H to bring everything back. But no, it didn't do it. He's still being all Gulliver on us. So yeah, we'll have to figure that one out. All right, he's gone. So now that I have this guy, my Spider-Man Large, and really I should put him in his own group. Maybe make a new collection. So to make a new collection, I can... Is it going to let me make a new collection? I'll click on this, and I should have a new collection, and I'm going to call this Make Human Figures Rigged, because they're rigged, and bring this into there. And oh my, there's a lot of these meshes, male casual suit, all this stuff needed to be in this object. So I think we're okay now, right? Ooh, will it let me? See, sort of taking it apart. That's what's weird. There we go. All right, so if I want to scale him up to be the size of this Spider-Man here, scale him up even bigger, make his head bigger. There's his head. And now I've got to do funky things with his body. And that's going to be really interesting. How do you pose this guy? So I think, again, you go to your transparency and go to pose mode. And with your pose mode, if I were to take this bone and rotate it in the rotate it in the x-axis, is he bending his leg like that? and then it would be rotated in the z-axis like that, then rotated again up. And then this bone here would be rotated and then rotated. This is going to get really funky. Rotate in the x-axis. You're going to have to play around with this to make it look right. Of course, his whole body is bent backwards at the neck. So this bone is, well, let's get these legs up first. Let's get this leg rotated up like this, and this leg rotated. It's a very unnatural movement. Rotated in the, it's the only way the bones can work like that. This leg has to rotate about X. And this bone very painfully has to rotate down, whoops, like that. And you begin to get your poses. This entire bone set here and then he's got to move his whole lumbar region and then take this arm. And here's where the inverse kinematics come into play, because if you were to grab this and position it back like that, and grab this and bring it, whoops, bring it down like that, I think you can see that we're now getting closer to the point where, go back to object mode. There's so much that goes into positioning a character. And we do have to bring it down. So you're going to have to really think in all these different dimensions. Like here I didn't do an inverse kinematics with the knee. So I'd have to rotate this on the z-axis forward. But we are getting to that point. This would have to be rotated on the, let's see, on the rotation straight is pretty difficult. There we go. And then grabbing this finger and bringing it down in pure Spiderman fashion. Yeah. So you're always doing G to do your inverse kinematics. So this is getting there, as you can see. There's a lot of work to be done on it. But turn off transparent. We're getting there. I mean, in terms of the perspective, you have to be aware of how you would take this body and how you would move it and how you would rotate it so that you got the proper perspective. Right? Because once he was in position, then of course his head would have to lift up. So you're doing a combination of posing in the, rotate on X, that head comes up a bit. Yep. Yeah, it's getting there. I mean, this is hardly perfect. Oops. Certainly he's twisted around a bit here, and his bones look like they're going to break. But he's getting that kind of Spider-Man-y pose. And what's cool about that is that if you have then a character like this, then you can do all sorts of cool things with him. So once you have him, if you go back to object mode, and I should have done that earlier, I can shift D and, ooh, didn't want to just get the bones on this. Let me undo that. I should be able to select all of him. And then I should be able to shift, and select him and create a copy that I can work with on a much smaller scale down in the other panels, who I can position around. And I think what's then is pretty cool is then how you can use this to begin to sketch characters. The position information that's in here in this guy I seem to have lost. There's the pose. I'm in pose mode. But you can see that this guy here is really you'd have to take him there and then start posing him so that this leg, for example, would kick out like that, and this leg here, grab your kinematic thing, stretch it down, then you're going to have to do a rotate here in X. This whole leg is going to have to be rotated, and you have to get sort of familiar with what kind of rotation is appropriate for this, and move your character around. So that you can get the look that you want. Right? So it's a trick. But it is working. Can't use G for that. You can only use G for the bones that have been made inverse kinematics. And then move up into object mode. Move that character again a little bit. But you can see we're beginning to get some of the this is one way that you can begin to do it and move your character around. And then you can turn off. Why doesn't he show up? Why does he still show up? Okay. Interesting. So still some stuff to figure out in here. But I think one of the things that's cool to show is that if you're trying to if you were trying to draw characters in different positions like this, and you didn't have a reference, then what you would be able to do is create a new grease pencil, a blank, and call this grease pencil make human. And then if you traced over those, then when you went to trace over those, because you're in this grease pencil, and you go into draw, then I'll have to pick a pencil here. And you can, oops. You can come in here with this dynamic figure and take your drawing tablet, and that color's not strong enough, is it? So let's see. Give it a material. Give it a color. Let's give it a blue so we can see it better. And yeah, let's try that. You're not really seeing it because the stroke is too thin. And when the stroke is too thin, you have to change the radius up a bit up here and the strength. And let's try it now. So just right now, sort of making a, oops, didn't mean to do that. I'll have to erase that later, but just showing let me just make it really big and broad right now, just because I don't want to take any time. You should get the basic idea of how you can use this. The same way that artists would have figures on their desks that they would pose so they could get the right poses, you now have the ability to use these virtual pose creatures. So when we turn this off, yeah, and we've sort of described what that figure might look like in the pose. And the same thing when you come down to the other pose that we have here. If that is the pose that we want to capture, and we're in grease pencil and we're in draw, we can come right on in and draw that one out. And now you can see, oops, yeah, I'm making a mess. You can see why the artists make these quick sketch circles for everything. It sort of teach you how to draw like that, like where the shoulders are and where the arms are because that kind of layout drawing, which is really sloppy, can get you faster to get your figure's basic dimensions before you start to add in any other details. All right, so you can start getting into the great art of sketching here. Know sort of where your eye line is and where your noses are and where your hairline is. And it'll be as sloppy as all get out, but the point would be that then when you go, you can even put in some muscles in here. All right. So when you go and look at what you got, there you got your figure in there. So you've started doing your basic layout for your comic, and then you can get rid of stuff that you don't want. So that's the basic idea then of using a make human pose, and you can get a lot better at it. All right? Thanks for watching.